The sound of a wrench hitting concrete echoes through the motor pool at Fort Knox. The metallic clang bounces off corrugated tin walls, bounces off steel tank hulls, bounces through the cold December morning air, and disappears into the fog that hangs low over the Kentucky training grounds like gunsmoke after a barrage. December 3rd, 1941, Tuesday, 0730 hours. 4 days before the world changes forever. 4 days before peace becomes memory. 4 days before every man in this motor pool will understand what Holbrook has known for 23 years. That war is not adventure. War is mathematics. The cold calculation of metal against flesh. The brutal arithmetic of who shoots first and who dies anyway. The sun has not yet burned through the mist. Will not for another hour. The air tastes of engine oil and winter coming, of diesel fuel mixed with frost, of metal and leather and canvas, and the peculiar sharpness that cold gives to everything it touches. The sharpness that makes your lungs ache when you breathe too deep, that makes your fingers clumsy when you try to work, that seeps into old injuries and reminds you of every mistake you ever made. Major James Holbrook stands in the maintenance bay watching his breath turn to vapor in the morning chill. 44 years old, 6 feet tall, 190 pounds, most of it muscle and scar tissue, and the accumulated density of a man who has spent 23 years climbing in and out of armored vehicles, of hauling himself through tank hatches, of contorting his body into spaces designed by engineers who never had to actually live in their creations. His uniform is pressed but not parade ground perfect. There is oil under his fingernails that no amount of scrubbing will ever fully remove. There will always be oil under his fingernails. His boots are spit-shined, except for the toes, which are scuffed from kicking loose track links and stubborn engine covers and recalcitrant transmission housings. The leather bears the white salt stains that come from standing in mud and snow, and the various fluids that leak from military vehicles operated by young men who are still learning the difference between maintenance and prayers. His face is weathered, lined, not handsome but not ugly either. Just the face of a man who has spent more time looking at engines than mirrors. Who cares more about whether something works than whether it looks good? Brown hair going gray at the temples, gray eyes that miss nothing, a jaw that sets hard when he is thinking, which is most of the time. His hands tell better stories than his face ever could. The left palm bears a burn scar that runs from the base of his thumb to his wrist. Shiny pink tissue that never tanned, never toughened, still tender after 23 years, still aches when the weather changes, when storms come, when he is tired or stressed or remembering things he wishes he could forget. The right hand is missing half the ring finger, caught in a tank hatch in 1927 during training exercises at Fort Benning. The hatch came down faster than expected, faster than he could move. The bone shattered. The flesh tore. They amputated at the second knuckle because infection had already set in by the time he admitted he needed a doctor. He stopped wearing his wedding ring after that, told Sarah it was because the ring would not fit anymore. She knew better. She always knew better. Knew that he stopped wearing it because every time he looked at his hand, he saw the missing finger and remembered the mistake he made. The moment of inattention that cost him part of himself. She understood that some men wear their failures like other men wear decorations, as reminders, as warnings, as proof that you are only as good as your last decision and every decision matters. These are not the marks of a desk officer. These are the hands of a man who trusts machinery more than he trusts people, who understands that steel does not lie, does not make promises it cannot keep, does not fail unless someone failed it first, unless someone cut a corner, skipped a step, decided that good enough was good enough, decided that probably is the same as definitely, decided that men can adapt to bad equipment instead of demanding that equipment measure up to men. The maintenance bay smells like every maintenance bay in every army base in the world. Oil and grease in the sharp bite of solvent that strips paint and skin with equal efficiency. The sweet stink of gasoline that makes your head swim if you breathe too much of it. The burnt smell of metal shavings, the particular odor of canvas and rubber, and the cosmoline preservative that coats every bolt and bearing and surface that might rust if left unprotected. 5 Stuart light tanks sit in various states of disassembly. Their turrets are open like mouths frozen mid-scream. Their engine compartments exposed like chests cracked open for surgery. Tools scattered around them like surgical instruments around operating tables. Diagnostic equipment, testing equipment, the machinery required to keep machinery running. The tanks look like sleeping animals waiting to wake, waiting to move, waiting to kill or be killed, depending on who is faster and luckier and whether the equipment works when you need it most. They are beautiful in their own way. Beautiful the way any pure tool is beautiful. Form following function with no wasted motion. No decoration, just brutal efficiency rendered in riveted steel and welded armor. But they are also obsolete. Anyone who knows tanks can see it. The 37mm gun is adequate for training. Barely. But against German panzers or Japanese tanks, it might as well be a pea shooter. The armor is thin enough that a determined man with a rifle and armor-piercing ammunition could punch through at close range. The engine is underpowered. The transmission is problematic. The suspension is fragile. The track pins wear out too fast. The whole machine is a compromise between what the Army wanted and what the budget allowed and what the factories could build in 1939 when the war in Europe was still someone else's problem. Now it is everyone's problem, or it will be soon. Holbrook can feel it coming, has felt it coming for 2 years, since Poland fell, since France fell, since Britain stood alone against the darkness and proved that courage and stubbornness can hold the line even when the odds say you should surrender. America will join this war. Everyone knows it. Everyone who is honest with themselves anyway. The only questions are when and how and at what cost, and whether the machines America sends to war will be good enough to matter. Good enough to win, good enough to bring the men inside them home again. A young private kneels beside the nearest steward. His hands shake as he tries to time the engine. The kid cannot be older than 19. Maybe 18. Maybe even 17 if he lied about his age to enlist the way so many boys do. Baby face that still needs to shave only twice a week. Scared eyes that have not yet seen anything that cannot be fixed. That still believe the world makes sense. That still think following orders and doing your best will keep you safe. Holbrook knows better. Has known better since 1918. Since he learned that the universe does not care about fairness or justice or who deserves to live and who deserves to die. That shells land where they land. That bullets go where they go. That good men die because of bad luck or bad intelligence or bad equipment, and there is no cosmic ledger that balances the scales. The kid fumbles with the timing light, drops it. The tool clatters on the concrete floor, bounces twice, rolls under the tank. The kid scrambles after it, retrieves it. His face is red now, embarrassed, ashamed. He picks up the light, tries to position it again. His hands shake worse than before. Worse because he knows he is failing. Worse because he can feel eyes on him even though no one is watching. Except Holbrook. Holbrook is always watching. The kid drops the timing light again. This time he catches it before it hits the floor. Barely. His breathing is fast now. Shallow. The breathing of someone on the edge of panic. Of someone who knows they are out of their depth and drowning and cannot figure out how to reach the surface. Holbrook walks over. His boots make almost no sound on the concrete floor. A trick he learned long ago. How to move quietly. How to be there before people notice you coming. How to observe before speaking. How to see what men are really doing instead of what they want you to think they are doing. The private does not notice him until Holbrook's shadow falls across the engine block, falls across the kid's hands, falls across the timing light that is about to be dropped for the 3rd time. The kid jumps like someone fired a shot 6 inches from his ear, nearly drops the light again, catches it at the last possible second. His face goes from red to white in the space of a heartbeat. His breathing stops entirely for 2 seconds, then restarts twice as fast. He starts to stammer an excuse, starts to explain that he is trying his best, that he studied the manual, that he does not understand what he is doing wrong. The words tumble over each other, desperate, pleading. Holbrook holds up one hand, palm out, the universal gesture for stop, for silence, for shut your mouth and listen. The kid shuts his mouth so fast his teeth click together. Holbrook does not speak. Not yet. He picks up a different wrench from the tool cart. 3/4 inch. Good weight, good balance. The kind of tool that fits your hand like it was made for you specifically. He hefts it once, feels the weight, the distribution, the way it wants to swing. He taps the wrench gently against the engine block. Just a light touch, the lightest possible contact between steel and steel. The sound rings out clear and pure, a musical note, middle C or close to it. The sound hangs in the air for a moment, then fades, then disappears into the general ambient noise of the motor pool. Holbrook listens, head tilted slightly to the right, eyes half closed, concentrating, reading the sound the way other men read books, extracting information, looking for patterns, for anomalies, for the things that should not be there. He taps again, same spot, same pressure. The sound is identical, perfect repeat, same pitch, same duration, same harmonics. This tells him the metal at this point is solid, uniform, no cracks, no voids, no inclusions or defects. He moves the wrench 6 inches to the left, taps once more, same gentle pressure, same technique. The sound changes, not much. Most people would not notice. Would hear only metal tapping. Metal would think it sounded the same as every other place on the engine block. But Holbrook notices, has trained himself to notice, has spent 23 years learning to hear the things other men miss. The note is flatter, deader. There is no ring to it, no sustain, just a dull thunk that dies the instant the wrench leaves the metal. Like tapping wood instead of steel, like tapping something hollow instead of solid. There, that spot, right there. He hands the wrench to the private. The kid takes it automatically, holds it like it might explode. Your name, soldier? Torres, sir. Danny Torres, from El Paso, Texas. The kid's voice shakes. He is terrified. Not of Holbrook specifically, of failing, of looking stupid, of washing out of training and being sent to the infantry where the life expectancy is measured in weeks instead of months, of disappointing the drill instructors who told him he had potential, of proving his father right. His father who said he was too soft for the army, too weak, too scared, who said he should stay in El Paso and work in the family grocery store and stop dreaming about being a soldier. Holbrook sees all of this in the kid's face, in his eyes, in the way he holds himself. Sees it because he has seen it 1,000 times before, because every young soldier carries the same burden. The fear that they are not good enough, that they will fail when it matters, that they will let down the men who depend on them. Torres, you know why you cannot hear what this engine is telling you? The private swallows hard. His Adam's apple bobs like a cork in rough water. His voice cracks when he speaks. The voice of someone barely holding on to composure. No, sir. Holbrook steps closer. Near enough to smell the fear coming off the kid in waves. Near enough to see the fine tremor in his hands. Near enough to know that this moment right here, right now will determine whether Torres becomes a tank mechanic or washes out and spends the war doing something else. Something safer maybe, but something that will haunt him for the rest of his life. The knowledge that he tried and failed, that he was not good enough. Because you are listening with your head. You need to listen with your whole body. An engine talks. It speaks a language older than words, older than writing. The language of metal and fire and controlled explosions and forces harnessed and directed. It tells you when something is wrong, when a bearing is going bad before the bearing actually fails, when oil pressure drops even before the gauge shows it, when the timing slips just enough to matter even though the engine still runs, when a valve is cracked or a gasket is failing, or a bolt is working itself loose. But you have to feel it, not just hear it, feel it. In your bones, in your gut, in that place where instinct lives. Holbrook places his scarred left hand flat on the engine block. The metal is cold, not quite freezing, but close. The kind of cold that seeps through skin and muscle and settles in bones. The kind of cold that makes old injuries ache. That makes the burn scar on his palm feel like it is being burned all over again. That makes the missing part of his right ring finger ache even though there is nothing there to ache. He presses down slightly, feels the metal vibrate under his palm, feels the engine running even though it is not running, feels the ghost of motion, the memory of fire, the potential energy waiting to be released. Put your hand here, next to mine. Torres does. His hand looks impossibly small next to Holbrook's. Looks like a child's hand, soft, uncalloused. The hand of someone who grew up with enough to eat and a warm place to sleep. The hand of someone whose biggest worry until 6 months ago was probably whether some girl named Maria or Sophia would go to the movies with him on Saturday night, whether his father would let him borrow the car, whether he would pass his algebra exam. Now his biggest worry is whether he will live long enough to care about any of that again. Feel that rhythm? That slight hitch every fourth beat? Torres concentrates. His eyes squeeze shut so tight that wrinkles form at the corners, even though he is too young for wrinkles. His whole body goes still, perfectly motionless, barely breathing, reaching for something he has never reached for before, trying to feel something he does not know how to feel. 5 seconds pass, 10, 15. Holbrook does not rush him, does not speak, lets the kid find it himself. Because the only way to learn this is to find it yourself. No amount of explanation will teach you to feel an engine. You either can or you cannot. You either have the sensitivity or you do not. You either care enough to notice or you do not. Then Torres's eyes snap open, wide, surprised, like someone just told him a secret he was not expecting to learn. I feel it, there, every fourth beat, like a skip, like a hiccup, just a tiny one, but it is there. His voice is filled with wonder, with discovery, with the pure joy of understanding something that was hidden and now is revealed. The joy that comes from pushing past your limits and finding that you are capable of more than you thought, that you are not soft, not weak, not scared, or maybe you are all of those things, but you are also something else, something stronger, something that matters. That is a valve not seating properly. Right there. Number 3 cylinder. The valve is cracked or the seat is damaged or there is carbon buildup preventing full seal. Does not matter which. What matters is in 10 hours, maybe 20, that valve fails completely. The engine seizes, the piston jams, the tank stops moving. And if that tank stops moving in the middle of enemy fire, what happens to the crew inside? Torres pulls his hand back like the metal suddenly burned him, like he touched a hot stove. His face has gone pale, white around the mouth, white around the eyes. He understands now. Understands that this is not just an exercise, not just a grade on a training evaluation, not just something to pass so he can move on to the next phase. This is life and death compressed into a 0.5 millimeter gap in a valve seat. This is 5 men who will trust him to maintain their tank properly, who will trust that when they need the engine to run, it will run, who will trust that the machine will not betray them at the moment when betrayal means death. They die, sir. The words come out as barely a whisper, choked, almost sob. They die, simple as that. No second chances, no do-overs, no mulligans or retakes or, please, can I try that again? You get it right or men die. That is the job. That is the only job that matters. Everything else is noise. Holbrook straightens up. His back aches. It always aches. 23 years of climbing in and out of tanks, of contorting himself into spaces designed by engineers who apparently thought human beings were made of rubber, of sleeping on the ground, of taking hits that would have killed softer men. Fix that valve, Torres. I will check your work in 1 hour. If it is not perfect, you start over. If it is not perfect after 3 tries, you are reassigned. Clear? Crystal clear, sir. The kid is already moving, already tearing into the engine with new purpose, new understanding. He fumbles less now. His hands still shake, but with excitement instead of fear. With the determination of someone who just discovered they can do something they did not think they could do. Holbrook watches for a moment, then turns away. His office is across the motor pool, a converted supply room that smells like old paper and newer coffee. The coffee is terrible. Army coffee always is. But it is hot, and it is caffeinated, and that is enough. He does not make it halfway before the memories hit. They always hit when he touches an engine, when he feels metal vibrate under his hands, when he smells oil and gasoline and the particular burnt odor that comes from machines pushed to their limits. July 1918. Soissons, France. Holbrook was 20 years old, a sergeant, not old enough to drink legally in most states, but old enough to command men in combat, old enough to make decisions that would determine whether those men lived or died. 3 weeks into commanding his first tank, a Renault FT, 6 tons of riveted steel and gasoline and hope and prayers, 18 horsepower engine that could barely push the thing up a steep hill, 37 millimeter gun that was adequate against infantry but useless against German anti-tank weapons. 2 machine guns, a crew of 2, sometimes 3 if you squeezed. The German artillery found them in an open field. No cover, no concealment, just flat ground and wheat stubble, and the certainty that they were about to die. The first shell landed 20 feet short. The impact shook the tank, threw Holbrook against the periscope hard enough to split his lip. The second shell landed 10 feet short, closer, getting the range, walking the fire toward them like a predator closing on prey. The third shell hit them direct, center mass, right on top of the turret. The sound, God, that sound, metal tearing like fabric, like the universe was being ripped in half. A sound so loud it went past sound into something else, something physical, something that hit you in the chest and stopped your heart and made your brain shut down because it could not process that much sensory input all at once. Men screaming, high and thin and desperate. The screams of men who know they are dying and cannot stop it and are terrified beyond any terror that training can prepare you for. Fire spreading, fast, so fast, gasoline ignited by the shell burst, flames filling the crew compartment in seconds, in heartbeats, turning the inside of the tank into an oven, into a crematorium, into hell rendered in steel and fire. The driver died instantly. Corporal Eddie Chen in the gunner position took shrapnel to both legs, fragments of the shell that penetrated the armor and turned into supersonic knives that cut through flesh and bone like they were nothing. He was screaming, high and continuous, a sound that did not seem human. The radio operator, a kid from Kansas whose name Holbrook can never remember no matter how hard he tries, was unconscious. Blood running from his ears, from his nose, from his mouth, percussion damage from the shell burst, brain trauma, internal injuries, dying even if Holbrook could not see it yet. The tank filled with smoke, thick black smoke that burned your throat and blinded you and made breathing impossible. The smell of burning oil and burning metal and burning flesh. A smell that gets into your clothes and your hair and your skin and never fully comes out. A smell that haunts you years later when you catch a whiff of something burning and suddenly you are back in that tank, back in that moment, back in that hell. The radio crackled, his company commander screaming through static, screaming orders, screaming at him to save himself. Abandon tank, abandon now. That is an order, Sergeant. Get out now. Holbrook looked at Eddie Chen, at the kid from Kansas, at 2 men who trusted him, who followed his orders, who believed that he would bring them home. He looked at the driver's body, at what was left of it, at the promise already broken. He grabbed the controls. His left hand was already burning from touching hot metal. The pain was immediate and absolute, like plunging his hand into boiling water, like pressing it against the hot iron. He could not feel his right leg, did not know until later that he had taken shrapnel to the thigh, that he was bleeding, that he should have been in shock, should have been incapacitated, should have been dead. He drove that tank 3 miles back to American lines, 3 miles through enemy fire, through artillery bursts, through machine gun fire that rattled off the armor like hail on a tin roof. Eddie Chen screaming the whole way, screaming for his mother, screaming for God, screaming for it to stop. Please, God, make it stop. The Kansas kid silent as death, but still breathing, chest rising and falling, barely, faintly, but still alive, still fighting, still holding on. They made it. Somehow they made it. The tank rolled into the American position, trailing smoke and fire and blood. Holbrook climbed out, collapsed, woke up in a field hospital 3 days later with his left hand wrapped in bandages and his right leg in a cast and a silver star pinned to his pillow by someone who thought metals mattered. Eddie Chen lived, lost both legs below the knee, but lived. Went home to San Francisco, got married, had kids. Sent Holbrook a Christmas card every year for 15 years. Then the cards stopped coming. Holbrook never found out why. Never had the courage to ask. The Kansas kid died 2 days after they got back. Brain hemorrhage, internal injuries. The doctor said he was dead the moment the shell hit. That bringing him back made no difference. That Holbrook could not have saved him, should not have tried, should have left him and saved himself and Chen. Holbrook did not care what the doctor said, still does not, because he made a promise, to himself if no one else. that he would not leave men behind, that he would bring everyone home or die trying, that the machine he commanded would not become their tomb. The Army gave him a Silver Star, gave him battlefield promotion to lieutenant, gave him a medical discharge offer that he refused. What they could not give him back was the certainty, the bone-deep knowledge that when metal fails, men die, that every bolt, every weld, every gasket matters. That mechanical perfection is not about pride or showing off or doing things by the book. It is about keeping promises to mothers and wives and children who want their boys to come home. 23 years later, and the burn scar still aches. 23 years later, and he still smells burning flesh when he closes his eyes at night. 23 years later, and he still hears Eddie Chen screaming, still sees the Kansas kid's face, still knows with absolute certainty that the universe is not fair, and good men die, and the only thing you can control is whether you do everything possible to prevent it. Major Holbrook, sir. The voice snaps him back to Kentucky, to 1941, to being 44 and feeling twice that, to standing in a motor pool in peacetime while the rest of the world burns. Master Sergeant Jack Callahan stands in the doorway of the office. Callahan is 50 years old, barrel-chested, going gray, probably the strongest man on the base pound for pound. He was there at Soissons. He pulled Holbrook out of that tank when Holbrook refused to leave until Eddie Chen was out first. He dragged both of them 50 yards to cover while German machine guns chewed up the dirt around them. Got hit twice doing it, once in the shoulder, once in the hip. Kept going anyway because that is the kind of man Jack Callahan is. They have not served apart since, not because the Army kept assigning them together, because Callahan kept requesting assignments wherever Holbrook went, because some bonds are stronger than orders, stronger than regulations, stronger than anything except maybe death, and even then Holbrook is not sure. Jack, what is it? Colonel Brennan wants to see you. Now. Said it is urgent. Holbrook checks his watch, 0830. He was not scheduled to meet Brennan until 1400 hours. 6 hours from now, a meeting that was supposed to be routine, quarterly training review, equipment status, personnel matters, the usual paperwork that keeps the Army functioning. Did he say why? No, sir. But he looks serious. Brennan always looks serious. That is his face. Could be giving you a commendation or a court-martial, and his expression would not change. Man has one setting, grim determination. Callahan does not smile at the joke, does not even acknowledge it. His face is set, worried, and Callahan does not worry easily, does not spook, does not panic, has seen too much, done too much, been through too much to be rattled by anything short of artillery landing on top of him. Sir, this was different. Something has happened. I do not know what, but something big. The walk to Colonel Marcus Brennan's office takes 4 minutes. 4 minutes during which Holbrook runs through every possible reason for an emergency summons. Equipment failure during training that killed someone. Accident in the motor pool. Budget cuts that will force them to lay off personnel. Another round of forced retirements for officers over 40, which the Army keeps threatening and occasionally implementing. Political pressure to reduce the size of the standing military because isolationists in Congress think America can stay out of the war by wishing hard enough. He has been expecting the forced retirement, waiting for it, dreading it. 44 is old for a field officer, ancient by tank commander standards. Most men his age are either dead or behind desks or out of the Army entirely. Teaching, farming, working factory jobs, living civilian lives. But Holbrook cannot imagine civilian life, cannot imagine waking up in the morning with nowhere to go. No mission, no purpose, no young men to train, no equipment to maintain, no promises to keep. What would he do? Sit on a porch and watch the world go by? Get fat and soft and useless? Become the kind of man who talks about what he used to do instead of what he is doing now? He would rather die. Literally. Would rather take a bullet than face forced retirement, than face irrelevance, than face the knowledge that he is no longer needed, no longer useful, no longer able to do the one thing he knows how to do. Brennan's office overlooks the tank training grounds. Through the window, Holbrook can see 3 stewards running obstacle courses. The tanks look small from here, toy-like, fragile, like children's toys instead of war machines. They crawl over berms, splash through water obstacles, navigate between posts and barriers, The crews are getting better, learning, improving, but they are still too slow, still too tentative, still thinking instead of reacting. The tanks themselves are inadequate, and everyone knows it. The 37 millimeter gun cannot penetrate German armor at combat ranges. Not the front armor anyway. Maybe the side or rear at close range if you are lucky. The armor cannot stop German guns at any range. The 75 millimeter gun on a Panzer IV will punch through a Stuart like tissue paper. The engine is underpowered. The transmission is problematic, fails too often. The suspension is fragile, breaks under hard use. The track pins wear out too fast, have to be replaced constantly. The whole machine is a compromise between what the Army wanted and what the budget allowed and what the factories could build in 1939, when the war in Europe was still someone else's problem. When America could pretend that oceans were still barriers, that distance meant safety, that the lessons of the last war still applied to this one. Now it is everyone's problem, or it will be soon. Holbrook can feel it coming, has felt it coming for 2 years, since Poland fell in 6 weeks, since France fell in 6 weeks, since Britain stood alone against the darkness and proved that courage and stubbornness can hold the line even when the odds say you should surrender, even when logic says you have already lost, even when the whole world expects you to quit. America will join this war. Everyone who is paying attention knows it, everyone who is honest with themselves anyway. The only questions are when and how and at what cost, and whether the machines America sends to war will be good enough to matter, good enough to win, good enough to bring the men inside them home again. Colonel Marcus Brennan sits behind his desk. He is 55 years old, white hair cut military short, face like carved granite, hard angles, no soft edges. He has known Holbrook for 15 years, trained him when Holbrook was a green lieutenant who thought he knew everything. Promoted him, challenged him, pushed him, became something close to a father after Holbrook's own father died in '36. Heart attack while plowing a field in Nebraska, dropped dead between the rows. 73 years old and working until the last second. Sit down, Jim. Holbrook sits. Brennan does not use first names, not in the office, not during duty hours. He is too much of an Army lifer for that. Too traditional. And too, by the book. The fact that he just used Holbrook's first name means the news is bad. Very bad. The kind of bad that transcends rank. That makes you talk to someone as a human being instead of as a subordinate or superior. I got a call from Washington this morning. Early, 0500, from General Patterson himself. Bull Patterson. Holbrook knows him. Served under him briefly in '38 at Fort Benning. A hard man, fair but hard. The kind of officer who demands excellence and accepts no excuses and gets results because his people would rather die than disappoint him. The kind of leader that men follow into hell because they trust that if he is asking them to go there, it must be necessary, must be worth it. What did he want? You. Me for what? Brennan stands, walks to the window, watches the stewards crawl over obstacles like insects over rocks, like beetles over logs, slow and methodical and vulnerable to anything larger than they are. There is a new tank project, light tank initially, called the T7, supposed to be revolutionary, better than Stuart in every way. 3-man turret instead of 1 man, bigger gun, better armor, faster, more reliable, everything the Stuart is not, everything we need it to be. That sounds promising. When can we get them? That is the question, is it not? International Harvester won the contract to build it. Farm equipment company, tractors, plows, combines, harvesters, good company, solid reputation. But never built a tank before. Never built anything military before. Never had to deal with Army specifications or testing or the 1,000 things that can go wrong when you are building something designed to be shot at. They are putting up a factory, new construction, ground up, in Iowa, Quad Cities area, Bettendorf specifically. Right on the Mississippi River. Good location, good workforce, good transportation. They broke ground 2 weeks ago. Should be operational in 6 months. Maybe less if they push hard enough. That is fast. War makes everything fast. Or it should anyway. Brennan turns back from the window. His face is tired. The tired of a man who has seen too much, done too much, lost too much. Who keeps going because stopping would mean admitting that it was all for nothing. They need someone who knows tanks, someone who has fought in tanks, someone who has commanded tanks in combat, someone who can look at blueprints and engineering drawings and specifications and say whether the thing will actually work when bullets are flying and shells are landing and everything is on fire and half your crew is screaming. Someone who can tell them if they are building a weapon or building a death trap. And most importantly, someone who will not lie about it, who will not say it is good enough when it is not good enough, who will not compromise, who will not accept second best, who will not let politics or money or schedules matter more than the lives of the men who will have to fight in it. Patterson asked for you specifically. Holbrook feels his stomach drop, feels the ground shift under him, feels the future he was dreading suddenly arrive like a freight train. I am an instructor, sir. I train tank crews. I teach maintenance. I make sure young kids like Torres know the difference between adequate and perfect. I am not an engineer. I barely graduated high school. I do not know differential equations or metallurgy or any of the things engineers know. No, but you know what works when bullets are flying. You know what fails and why. You know which specifications matter and which ones are just engineers covering their asses. You know the difference between theory and practice, between what looks good on paper and what keeps men alive. Patterson said they have plenty of engineers, smart guys, degrees from good schools, but what they do not have is someone who has bled in a tank, someone who has pulled wounded men out of burning metal, someone who has driven 3 miles with his hand burning and his legs shattered because leaving was not an option. The words hang in the air, heavy, inescapable. The truth that both men know but rarely acknowledge. When do I leave? Brennan's shoulders drop. He was expecting a fight, expecting Holbrook to argue, to demand to go to the front instead, to say that he is a combat officer, not a liaison, not a technical advisor, not a desk jockey, that his place is on the battlefield, not in a factory. You are not going to argue? Asked to go to the front? Holbrook looks at the stewards through the window, thinks about Torres, about all the Torres types out there, about all the 19-year-old kids who will climb into tanks and drive toward the enemy because their country asked them to. Who will trust that their equipment works? Who will believe that someone somewhere made sure the machine would not betray them at the moment when betrayal means death? I have asked to go to the front, sir, every month since the war started in Europe. Every month you tell me I am more valuable as an instructor, that young officers can learn to command in combat, but someone has to teach them first, that my experience is worth more here than there. That is true. It is still true. Then I will be valuable wherever you send me. If this tank can save lives, I will make sure it does. If it cannot, I will make sure we know before we send men to die in it. That is my job. That has always been my job, keeping men alive by making sure the steel does not fail them. Brennan nods slowly. Something like relief crosses his face. Or maybe respect. Or maybe just the grim satisfaction of knowing he read Holbrook correctly. That the man he trusted to train crews is the same man he can trust to do this impossible job. You leave in 2 days, Saturday. Report to Patterson in Washington first. He will brief you on the details. The politics, the players, the problems they already know about, and the problems they suspect. Then Iowa, Bettendorf, the factory, the civilians, the engineers, the whole mess. What about my duties here? The training program? Captain Morrison will take over. Thomas Morrison, just made captain last month. West Point class of 38. Good officer, bright, eager, top of his class in tactics. Holbrook knows the name, knows the face. 28 years old, clean cut, enthusiastic. The kind of young officer who thinks war is glorious, who reads books about tank warfare but has never smelled the inside of a burning tank, who studies tactics but has never had to make a decision while men are screaming and the world is ending around you. Sir, with respect, Morrison does not have the experience to run this program. He has never commanded tanks in combat, never even commanded tanks in field exercises where things go wrong. He is smart, but smart is not enough, not for this. He will learn. You did. I learned because you spent 5 years teaching me, because you let me make mistakes when the cost of mistakes was training time instead of lives, because you did not throw me into the deep end and hope I figured out how to swim. Morrison gets 2 days. Washington, D.C. in December feels like a city holding its breath. The monuments stand white against gray skies. The streets are full of men in uniform walking with purpose, walking fast, walking like they know something the rest of the country does not know yet, like they can feel the storm coming even if they cannot see it. Holbrook arrives at Union Station after 12 hours on the train. His back aches from sitting. His leg aches from the old wound. Everything aches. 44 years old and feeling every single one of those years plus a few extra. Callahan looks fresh somehow. The man can sleep anywhere, can wake up ready to fight, a talent Holbrook has never possessed. They take a cab to the War Department. The building is chaos, men running, phones ringing, typewriters clacking like machine guns. The whole place vibrates with barely contained panic dressed up as efficiency. Something is happening. Something big. But nobody will say what. Just tight faces and curt nods and the sense that the world is about to change and nobody knows quite how. Brigadier General Theodore Patterson's office is on the third floor. A secretary tells them to wait. They wait. 20 minutes becomes 40. 40 becomes an hour. Men come and go. Colonels, majors, civilians in expensive suits, all of them looking worried, all of them walking fast. Finally, the secretary waves them in. Patterson sits behind a desk covered in papers and maps and photographs. He is 58 years old, built like a bower gone slightly soft, graying hair, hard eyes. The kind of man who has seen combat and liked it, who understands that war is not about glory. War is about winning, about killing the enemy before the enemy kills you, about doing whatever it takes and accepting the cost. Holbrook, Callahan, sit. They sit. Patterson does not look up from the papers, does not waste time on pleasantries or small talk, just keeps reading, keeps making notes, keeps working through whatever crisis has the War Department in an uproar. You know why you are here? Yes, sir. The M7 tank project, International Harvester, Bettendorf, Iowa. Patterson finally looks up. His eyes are bloodshot. He has not slept, maybe for days. The whole building has that feeling, that sense of men pushing past exhaustion into something else, someplace where adrenaline and coffee and duty are the only things keeping you upright. That was why you were here, past tense. As of this morning, priorities have changed. Everything has changed. Sir, Patterson stands, walks to the window, looks out at the city, at the monuments, at the capital of a nation that is about to stop pretending it can avoid war. In approximately 6 hours, Japan will attack Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, multiple waves of aircraft, hundreds of planes. Our Pacific Fleet will be crippled. Thousands of our men will be dead, and this country will be at war, whether we like it or not. The words hit like artillery. Holbrook feels his stomach drop, feels the world tilt. 6 hours, Pearl Harbor, war, not coming someday, coming today, coming now. How do you know this, sir? Because intelligence picked up chatter. Because our cryptographers decoded enough to know something big is happening. Because the Japanese embassy has been burning documents for 2 days. Because every sign points to imminent attack and our ships are sitting in harbor like ducks in a pond. Can we warn them? We did, but hours ago. Whether they got the message in time, whether they can do anything about it, is beyond our control now. What we can control is how we respond, how we prepare, how we make sure this never happens again. Patterson turns back from the window. His face is stone, the face of a man who has accepted terrible news and moved past grief into action. The M7 project just became the most important thing you will ever work on. Not because the tank is revolutionary, not because it is the best design, but because we need something, anything, that is better than what we have. We are going to war with Stuarts and Grants and whatever else we can scrape together. But next year, the year after, we need tanks that can actually fight, that can actually win, that can bring our boys home. I understand, sir. Do you? Because I am about to ask you to do something that will make you hate me. I am about to ask you to go to Iowa and watch civilians who have never built a tank try to build a tank. And you will not have command. You will not have authority. You will be an advisor, a technical liaison, which means you get to tell them what is wrong, but you cannot order them to fix it. You get to watch them make mistakes, and all you can do is write reports that people in Washington may or may not read. That sounds frustrating, sir. It will be worse than frustrating. It will be infuriating. You will want to strangle people. You will want to take over. You will want to grab some fool by the collar and shake him until he understands that this is not about money or schedules. This is about life and death. But you cannot do that, because if you do, they will have you removed. And then somebody else will take your place. Somebody who does not know what you know. Somebody who has never bled in a tank. And then the project will fail for certain instead of just probably. Holbrook looks at Callahan. Callahan's face is calm, accepting. The face of a man who has been in impossible situations before and survived them by not panicking, by doing the job, by putting one foot in front of the other until either you win or you die. What exactly do you want from me, sir? Patterson sits back down, pulls out a folder, opens it. Inside are photographs, technical drawings, specifications, the skeleton of a tank that does not exist yet. This is the T7, started as a light tank, supposed to replace the Stuart. Bigger gun, better armor, 3-man turret, improved suspension, everything we need. International Harvester won the contract in November. They are building a factory from scratch. Supposed to start production in 6 months. That is fast, too fast. But war makes everything fast. The problem is they have never built a tank. They build tractors, farm equipment, good quality equipment. But tractors do not get shot at. Tractors do not have to protect crews. Tractors can break down, and the worst that happens is you lose a day of plowing. Tanks break down and men die. I need you to go there. I need you to work with their engineers, with their managers, with whoever will listen. I need you to take your 23 years of experience and compress it into their heads. I need you to make them understand what matters and what does not. What specifications are critical and which are just engineers covering their asses. And if they do not listen, then you document everything. You write detailed reports. You create a paper trail so when the tank fails and men die, at least we will know why. At least we will know who to blame. At least future projects will learn from the mistakes. That is cold comfort, sir. It is the only comfort you are going to get. Welcome to procurement hell, Major, where good intentions go to die and the best you can hope for is that someone learns something useful from the wreckage. Patterson slides the folder across the desk. Holbrook opens it, studies the drawings, the specifications, the beautiful lies that engineers tell themselves about how things will work in theory versus how they actually work when bullets are flying. The design is ambitious, too ambitious maybe. 3-man turret requires a turret ring 58 inches in diameter. That is massive for a light tank. The suspension is complex, multiple arms and springs and pivot points, any one of which can fail. The engine is a Continental radial, good engine in theory, but radials are finicky, require precise maintenance, overheat easily if cooling is inadequate. The whole thing looks like it was designed by someone who understands engineering but not combat, who knows how to make something work on paper but not how to make it survive in mud and blood and fire. When do we leave for Iowa, sir? Tomorrow, but there is something else you need to know. Something that will make your job even harder. The design is not frozen. Rock Island Arsenal is building the pilot tanks now, but the specifications keep changing. First, it was a light tank with a 37mm gun. Then they decided the gun was too weak. So now it is a 57mm. But that makes the tank heavier. So the suspension has to change, and the engine, and the transmission. Everything cascades. Every change creates 10 more problems. That is a disaster, sir. Yes, but it is our disaster. And you are going to try to prevent it from becoming a catastrophe. You are going to try to impose some order on chaos, some discipline on wishful thinking, some reality on people who think tanks are just tractors with armor. What about resources? Authority. If I need something, if I need to make a call, if I need to bypass somebody who is being an idiot, you call me directly. Here is my direct line. If I am not available, you call my aide, you explain the problem, you document it in writing, and then you hope that someone with actual authority cares enough to do something about it. That is the best I can offer. Not much of a safety net, sir. No, but it is more than most advisors get. I am giving you my personal attention because Colonel Brennan vouched for you personally, because I trust his judgment, because when Brennan says someone is the right man for an impossible job, that man usually is. I will do my best, sir. Your best better be excellent, because in 2 years, maybe 3, we are going to invade Europe. And when we do, our boys are going to need tanks that work. Tanks that can fight German panzers and win. If the M7 is not ready, they go in Shermans. If Shermans are not ready, they go in Stuarts. And if all they have are Stuarts, they die. Simple as that. So your job is not just technical liaison. Your job is keeping men alive 3 years from now. Men you will never meet, men who will never know your name, but who will live or die based on whether you do your job well enough. The weight of it settles on Holbrook's shoulders, heavy, crushing, the weight of thousands of lives, of decisions not yet made, of mistakes not yet committed, of all the ways this can go wrong and men can die because he was not good enough, not smart enough, not persuasive enough, not willing to fight hard enough. I understand, sir. Good. Now get out of here. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you go to Iowa. Tomorrow you start trying to turn farmers into tank builders. God help you both. They leave. Walk back through the chaos of the War Department. Back through the men running and the phones ringing and the sense that the world is ending and beginning at the same time. Out into the December cold. Into the city holding its breath. Callahan speaks first. His voice is quiet, thoughtful. 6 hours. War starts in 6 hours. Yes, and we are not there, not where it matters, not where we can help. No, we are here, about to go to Iowa, about to spend the next year watching civilians build a tank that may or may not work, that may or may not matter, that may or may not save anyone. You sound bitter. I am bitter. I am 44 years old and I have spent my entire adult life preparing for war. And now that war is here, they are sending me to a factory, sending me to watch, to advise, to write reports, sending me anywhere except where I can actually fight. Callahan stops walking, puts a hand on Holbrook's shoulder. The grip is firm, solid. The grip of a man who has pulled you out of burning tanks and will do it again if necessary. Jim, listen to me. You are fighting, just not with a tank. You are fighting bureaucracy, fighting stupidity, fighting the tendency of good people to make bad decisions because they do not know any better. That is a fight too. Maybe a harder fight, maybe a more important fight. Because if you win, you save more men than you ever could commanding a single tank. Maybe. No maybe. Definitely. You know it. I know it. Patterson knows it. That is why you are going to Iowa instead of the Pacific. That is why they are wasting a decorated combat veteran on procurement. Because sometimes the most important battles are not the ones with bullets. They walk back to the hotel in silence. The city around them continues breathing, continues waiting. In 6 hours, the waiting will end. In 6 hours, everything changes. But for now, there is just the cold December evening. Just 2 soldiers walking through a city at peace for a few more hours. That night, Holbrook cannot sleep. Lies in the hotel bed staring at the ceiling. Thinking about Pearl Harbor. About ships burning. About men drowning in sealed compartments. About all the ways war begins. All the ways men die. He thinks about Torres. About the kid learning to listen to engines. About whether Morrison will teach him properly. About whether Torres will survive whatever is coming. About whether anyone will survive. He thinks about Iowa. About a factory that does not exist yet. About a tank that exists only in drawings. About civilians who think building weapons is like building tractors. About all the ways this can fail. All the mistakes that can be made. All the lives that hang in the balance. At 0400 hours, he gives up on sleep, gets dressed, goes down to the hotel lobby, finds Callahan already there, already packed, already ready to go. Neither of them mentions that they were awake all night. Neither of them needs to. They take an early train. The station is nearly empty. Too early for normal travelers. Just soldiers. Just men in uniform heading to new posts, new assignments, new wars. The train pulls out heading west, heading toward Iowa, toward whatever waits there. Somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, the sun is rising. Japanese aircraft carriers are launching planes. American sailors are drinking coffee and looking forward to Sunday breakfast. And in a few hours, the world that was will become the world that is. But Holbrook does not know the details yet, does not know about the burning ships, does not know about the thousands dead, does not know that the war he has been expecting is finally here. Will not know for hours. Will learn from a conductor walking through the train car with news that just came over the radio. Japs hit Pearl Harbor. Multiple waves, fleet is burning, thousands dead, we are at war. The train goes silent. Every conversation stops. Every man processes the information in his own way. Some curse, some pray, some just sit in stunned silence. War was expected. War was inevitable. But knowing it is coming and experiencing it are two different things. Holbrook feels numb, feels disconnected, feels like he is watching this happen to someone else. Then the numbness cracks, and underneath is rage. Pure, cold rage. Not at the Japanese. They are just doing what nations at war do. Rage at the waste, at the stupidity, at the fact that this could have been prevented, should have been prevented. That intelligence knew it was coming and could not stop it. He thinks about the sailors at Pearl Harbor, about kids probably not much older than Torres, about men who woke up thinking it was just another Sunday, just another day of routine and boredom and waiting for something to happen. And then something happened, and it was fire and death and chaos. He thinks about how many of them died because their ships were not ready, because damage control was not prepared, because equipment failed or training was inadequate or someone made a bad decision under pressure. All the ways men die that have nothing to do with courage or cowardice, that are just the brutal mathematics of preparedness versus surprise. This is why Iowa matters. This is why the M7 matters. Not because it will avenge Pearl Harbor, but because the next time American men go into combat, they need equipment that works. Equipment that was built by people who understood the stakes, who did not cut corners, who did not compromise, who cared enough to get it right. The train continues west, through Pennsylvania, through Ohio, through Indiana. The landscape scrolls past like a film strip. Farms, small towns, rivers, forests. America at peace for a few more hours. America before everyone knows. Before the news spreads. Before the entire country mobilizes for war. By the time they reach Illinois, the news has spread. People line the stations, watching the trains go by, watching the soldiers. Some wave, some cry, some just stand and watch like they are witnessing history and want to remember this moment. The moment when everything changed. Holbrook watches them back, watches the faces, young and old, men and women, children who do not understand why their parents look so worried. All of them connected now by the knowledge that their country is at war, that their boys will go fight, that some will not come home. This is what he is fighting for. Not abstractions, not concepts. These people, these faces, these lives that will be disrupted and damaged and sometimes destroyed by decisions made in Washington and Detroit and Iowa, by specifications written by engineers, by compromises made by managers, by all the small failures that add up to big disasters. The train arrives in Davenport, Iowa at 1800 hours, nearly dark, cold. The station is quiet, a few people waiting for loved ones, a few soldiers like them arriving for new assignments. No fanfare, no ceremony, just the quiet arrival of two men nobody knows carrying orders, nobody cares about, to work on a project nobody has heard of. They take a cab to Bettendorf, 5 miles north along the river. The driver is talkative, excited. Did they hear about Pearl Harbor? Is it true thousands died? Are we really at war? What is going to happen now? Holbrook answers politely but minimally, does not have the energy for conversation, does not want to discuss the war with a civilian who thinks it is exciting instead of horrifying, who sees adventure instead of tragedy, who does not understand what is coming. The Quad Cities tank arsenal is impossible to miss. Even in the dark, you can see it. A massive complex on complex of buildings rising from what was empty land 6 weeks ago. Concrete and steel and tin, bright lights blazing, construction continuing even at night, men working in shifts, building, always building, trying to turn dirt into a factory before the war makes it necessary instead of just prudent. The cab drops them at what looks like a temporary headquarters, a converted farmhouse, lights on inside, vehicles parked outside, men coming and going even at this hour. The project runs 24 hours. Has to. Time is the enemy now. Time and the knowledge that every day wasted is another day American soldiers go to war with inadequate equipment. Holbrook and Callahan walk to the entrance, show their orders to a guard. are directed to an office on the second floor. The stairs creak. The building smells like fresh paint and sawdust and coffee. Lots of coffee. Industrial quantities of coffee, keeping exhausted men functional. The office belongs to Charles Ashford, project director for International Harvester. 52 years old, thick glasses, thinning hair. The look of an engineer who became a manager and never quite adjusted to telling other people what to do instead of doing it himself. He looks up when they enter, stands, offers his hand. His grip is firm, but his hand is soft. The hand of someone who works with pencils and slide rules instead of wrenches and welding torches. Major Holbrook, Master Sergeant Callahan. Welcome to Bettendorf. Sorry we are meeting under these circumstances. Hell of a day. Yes, sir, hell of a day. Please sit. You must be exhausted. 18 hours on trains. Would you like coffee? I can have someone bring coffee. We are fine, thank you. Ashford sits back down, gestures at the window, at the construction site beyond, at the buildings rising from nothing like a city being born. What you see out there is 3 months of work. Fastest construction project in company history. Maybe in American history. We broke ground September 1st. Had to clear the site first, grade it, put in foundations, utilities, railroad spurs, everything a factory needs. And we did it in weeks instead of months. Working 3 shifts, 7 days a week, pouring concrete when it was 90 degrees, framing walls when it was snowing, men working until they dropped, and then getting up and working more because they understood what was at stake. Even before today, even before Pearl Harbor, they understood. That is impressive. It is desperate. That is what it is. Desperate and maybe foolish. We are building a factory to build a tank we have never seen. Following specifications that change every week. Hiring workers who have never built anything military. Training welders who learned to weld last month. Ordering machine tools that may or may not arrive. Coordinating with subcontractors who are just as lost as we are. And doing it all while praying that when we finally start production, the damn thing actually works. That is why we are here, to help make sure it works. Ashford laughs. Not a happy laugh, a tired laugh. The laugh of a man who has been working too hard for too long and knows he is nowhere near done. Major, no offense, but I was told you are a technical liaison, an advisor, which means you can tell us what is wrong, but you cannot fix it. You cannot order anyone to do anything. You cannot reassign workers or redirect resources or make any of the decisions that actually matter. So forgive me if I am not reassured by your presence. Holbrook keeps his voice level, keeps his temper under control. Getting angry will accomplish nothing. Ashford is not the enemy. Ashford is a good man trying to do an impossible job with inadequate resources and no experience. Getting angry at him would be like getting angry at Torres for not knowing how to time an engine. Pointless, counterproductive. Mr. Ashford, you are right. I cannot order anyone to do anything. I have no authority here except the authority you choose to give me. But what I do have is 23 years of experience with tanks, real tanks, combat tanks. Tanks that have been shot at and caught fire and had men die inside them because something failed. I know what fails and why. I know which specifications matter and which ones are engineers protecting themselves from lawsuits. I know what combat crews need and what they can work around. I know the difference between adequate and perfect, and I know that adequate gets men killed. So no, I cannot fix your problems, but I can help you avoid problems you do not know you have yet. I can save you months of trial and error. I can tell you which shortcuts are acceptable and which ones will result in tanks that fail in the field. That is what I offer. Take it or leave it. But if you leave it and the tanks fail and men die, at least I will be able to say I tried. Ashford is silent for a long moment, studies Holbrook's face, looks for something. Truth maybe, or competence, or just the willingness to help instead of hinder. Finally he nods. All right, I will take it. God knows we need all the help we can get. Let me show you what we are dealing with. He pulls out drawings, spreads them on the desk, technical specifications, assembly diagrams, parts list, the skeleton of a tank reduced to lines and numbers. This is the T7 as it exists today. Light tank, approximately 22 tons. That is already 8 tons heavier than the original spec. Continental R975 radial engine, 400 horsepower. Torque converter transmission. Torsion bar suspension. 57mm gun, 3-man turret, crew of 5. On paper, it is everything we need. Better armored than Stewart, better armed, faster, more reliable suspension. The turret ring is big enough for 3 men to work without climbing on top of each other. The engine and transmission are on rails for easy maintenance. Everything is designed to be better than what we have. What is the problem? The problem is we do not have blueprints for half of it. Rock Island Arsenal is building the pilot tanks right now. 2 of them, maybe 3. But they are doing it iteratively. Building, testing, modifying. They send us drawings when they finalize something, which means we are trying to set up production for a design that does not exist yet. The problem is the specifications keep changing. First, it was 37mm gun, then 57. Now they are talking about 75mm, which would make it a medium tank, which changes everything. Weight, balance, recoil, hull design, turret design, everything. The problem is we do not have machine tools. We ordered them, lots of them, hundreds of them, mills and lathes and presses and drills and grinders. Everything you need to make precision parts. But they are on back order. Every factory in America needs machine tools. We are competing with everyone. And our priority rating is lower than most tank projects because this is a new design instead of proven production. Holbrook feels a cold weight in his stomach. This is worse than he expected. Much worse. They are building a factory for a tank that does not exist to specifications that keep changing, using tools they do not have. It is not just ambitious, it is insane. How are you building anything without machine tools? Ashford's expression is grim. Toolroom methods, handcrafting parts, using whatever tools we have, files and hammers and ingenuity. It is slow, expensive, imprecise, but it is all we have. We are building the factory and the tools at the same time, making our own fixtures and jigs because we cannot wait for the right equipment, hoping that when the real tools arrive, we can transition to proper production without starting over. That is going to create quality control nightmares. I know, but what choice do we have? Wait for everything to be perfect and start production in a year? Or start now with what we have and fix problems as we find them? War chose for us. War said start now, so we started. Holbrook looks at the drawings again, sees the ambition, sees the problems, sees all the ways this can fail, but also sees something else, sees the determination, the willingness to try even when the odds are terrible, the refusal to give up just because the task is impossible. This is the American way, not the smartest way, not the most efficient way, but the way that says we will figure it out as we go. We will make mistakes and learn from them. We will waste time and money and effort, but we will not quit, will not surrender, will not accept that it cannot be done. Mr. Ashford, show me the factory, show me what you have, show me where you are struggling, and let me see if 23 years of breaking things can help you avoid breaking this. Ashford stands, grabs a coat, leads them out of the office, down the stairs, out into the December night. The cold hits like a fist, wind off the river cutting through clothes, making old injuries ache, making exhaustion worse. They walk across mud that will be pavement someday, past stacks of steel beams waiting to be installed, past pallets of bricks and concrete blocks and all the raw materials required to build buildings. Men work everywhere. Welding, hammering, sawing, building, even at night, even in the cold, even on the day their country went to war. They keep working because the work has to be done. The main assembly building is cavernous, a football field of open space under a tin roof. The floor is still being poured in sections. Concrete mixers running, men spreading and leveling, creating the foundation on which tanks will be built. If tanks are ever built, if this whole project does not collapse under the weight of its own ambition. Machine tools are scattered around. Not many, maybe 20, lathes, mills, a few drill presses, not nearly enough for production, barely enough for prototyping. They look tiny in the huge space, like toys in a warehouse. Over there is where we will have the main assembly line. Tanks will come down that path. Each station adds components: hull, suspension, engine, transmission, turret. By the time it reaches the end, it should be a complete tank ready for testing. Should be. We have not actually done it yet because we do not have enough parts, cannot make enough parts, cannot get enough drawings to know what parts to make. What about subcontractors? Who is making what? Ashford pulls out a list, reads it like a prayer, like an incantation, like naming all the pieces will somehow make them real. Standard Steel Springton, Michigan is doing armor plate. Orton Steel Foundry here in Rock Island is doing hull castings. American Steel and General Steel Castings in Granite City are doing other castings. Tracks from Goodyear or Firestone in Akron. Engines from Continental in Detroit. Our Milwaukee plant is doing transmissions. Richmond plant doing traversing gears. East Moline doing final drives. And everyone is behind schedule. Everyone is struggling. Everyone is learning as they go. American Steel has never made turret castings. Orton has never made tank hulls. Continental is used to aircraft engines, not tank engines. Everyone is improvising. What about gun mounts? Ashford hesitates, then sighs. Lino Type Company, here in Davenport. They make typesetting machines. We asked if they wanted to try gun mounts. They said yes, got started in February. Then in May, we told them to switch from 37mm to 57mm. Everything they did for 3 months became obsolete. They had to start over. And now if we go to 75mm, they start over again. Holbrook thinks about the linotype engineers, about their frustration, about working for months only to be told it was all wasted, about starting fresh, about the temptation to say this is impossible and walk away. But they did not walk away. They started over, because that is what Americans do. They start over, they adapt, they overcome, not because they are smarter than everyone else, but because they refuse to quit even when quitting makes sense. I want to meet the linotype people, tomorrow if possible. I want to see their work, want to talk to their engineers, want to make sure that when we finally settle on a gun size, they build a mount that actually works in combat. I can arrange that. They walk through more of the factory, through sections still under construction, through areas that exist only as concrete pads and steel frames, through the ghost of what this place will become if everything works, if the impossible becomes merely difficult, if determination proves sufficient. Welding stations are set up in one corner, women in protective gear practicing their craft, learning to lay perfect beads, learning that imperfect welds kill people. One of them is older, 50s maybe, gray hair under her welding cap, hands that have seen hard work. She welds with confidence, with precision, each pass perfect, each bead identical to the last. Holbrook stops to watch. The woman does not notice him, is too focused on her work, on doing it right, on meeting a standard she has set for herself that probably exceeds any official specification. She finishes a seam, lifts her helmet, inspects her work critically, nods once, satisfied but not pleased, the attitude of someone who accepts competence but demands excellence. Holbrook speaks quietly so as not to startle her. That is beautiful work. She turns, looks at him, studies the uniform, the rank, decides whether he is someone worth talking to or just another officer come to inspect and criticize. Thank you. My name is Martha Kowalski. I have 3 sons in the service. Somewhere, I do not know where, they cannot tell me. So I come here, I weld, I build, I make things that might protect someone's son. Maybe my son's, maybe someone else's. Does not matter which, just matters that I do it right. Her voice has an accent, Polish, maybe, or Czech. One of the immigrant communities that settled Iowa and worked the land and built lives from nothing. One of the families that know hardship, that know sacrifice, that understand doing what must be done without complaint. Your sons are lucky to have you, and the men who use these tanks are lucky to have you welding them. I hope they never have to use them. I hope this war ends tomorrow, and all this is wasted effort. But if they do have to use them, I want them to survive. Want them to come home. Want some mother somewhere to see her boy again, because my weld held, and the armor stopped the bullet, and he got to live another day. That is what I want. She turns back to her work. Conversation over. Time to weld. No time to waste on talking when there is building to be done. Holbrook and Ashford continue the tour. Through more construction, more unfinished spaces, more promises waiting to be kept or broken. Finally back to the temporary headquarters. Back to the warmth. Back to the coffee and the paperwork and the 1,000 small decisions that either add up to success or failure. Ashford looks exhausted. Looks like he has not slept in days. Probably has not. Probably will not tonight either. The burden of this project sits heavy on his shoulders. The responsibility for something he is not sure he can accomplish. The knowledge that if he fails, men will die. That is not theoretical. Not anymore. Pearl Harbor made it real, made it immediate, made it personal. Major, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate the help. God knows we need it. But I want you to understand something. This project was already impossible before today. Now it is doubly impossible. The Army is going to want faster production, more tanks, sooner. And we are already stretched to breaking. Already doing things that make no sense. Already hoping that determination can substitute for proper planning. I do not know if we can build this tank. I do not know if it will work. I do not know if any of this matters. But I know we are going to try. We are going to work until we drop. We are going to solve problems that should not be solvable. We are going to build something out of nothing because that is what America does when its back is against the wall. But I need you to be honest with me, brutally honest. If you see something wrong, tell me. If you see us making mistakes, stop us. If you see us building garbage, say so. I do not care about politics. I do not care about hurt feelings. I care about building tanks that work, tanks that keep men alive. Can you do that? Holbrook meets his eyes, sees the sincerity there, the desperation, the need for help from someone who actually knows what they are doing. Mr. Ashford, I spent 18 hours on a train thinking about Pearl Harbor, thinking about men dying because they were not ready, because equipment failed, because someone somewhere made a bad decision or cut a corner or did not think it mattered. And I made myself a promise. I promise that I will not let that happen here. I will not let you build tanks that fail. I will be the most difficult person you have ever worked with. I will question everything. I will accept nothing on faith. I will make you prove every decision. And when you cannot prove it, I will make you change it. Even if it delays production, even if it costs money, even if it makes people angry. Because better to delay by a month than send defective tanks to battle. Can you work with that? Ashford considers, weighs the offer, weighs the cost, then nods slowly. Yes, I think I can. I think I have to. Because you are right. Better to get it right than get it fast. Better to delay than deliver garbage. My pride is not worth a single American life. Then we understand each other. Tomorrow we start properly. Tonight we sleep, or try to anyway. They shake hands. An agreement made, an alliance formed. Two men from different worlds finding common ground in the knowledge that what they do matters. That men they will never meet are depending on them. That failure is not acceptable, even if it is probable. Holbrook and Callahan are given quarters in the farmhouse. Small rooms, basic furniture, clean but Spartan. Everything focused on function over comfort, the way it should be, the way it has to be when the mission matters more than convenience. Callahan falls asleep immediately. The man could sleep in a foxhole during an artillery barrage, has slept in worse places than a clean bed in a heated room. Holbrook lies awake, stares at the ceiling, thinks about everything he saw, everything he heard, all the problems, all the challenges, all the ways this can fail. He thinks about Martha Kowalski, about her 3 sons, about her welding because it is the only thing she can do to help them, to protect them, to bring them home, and he understands her completely. Understands that this is what you do when you cannot fight. You build, you support, you give everything you have to make sure others survive. He thinks about Torres, about whether Morrison is teaching him properly, about whether the kid will remember to listen to engines, about whether all those hours of training will matter when Torres finally sees combat. If Torres sees combat, if he survives that long. He thinks about Pearl Harbor, about ships burning, about men trapped below decks, about the chaos and the panic and the realization that war is here, not coming, here now, today, and nothing will ever be the same. He thinks about tomorrow, about walking through the factory with fresh eyes, about meeting the engineers and the workers and all the people trying to do impossible things with inadequate resources, about how to help them, how to guide them, how to keep them from making mistakes that will kill men 3 years from now when the M7 tanks roll into battle. If they ever roll into battle, if they ever get built at all. Sleep eventually comes, Not good sleep, not restful sleep, but enough, the sleep of a man who has learned to function on whatever rest he can grab, who has trained himself to shut down when the opportunity presents itself because you never know when the next chance will come. Tomorrow, the real work begins. Tomorrow, he starts trying to turn farmers into tank builders. Tomorrow, he starts fighting a different kind of war. Not with guns, not with grenades, but with specifications and standards and the stubborn insistence that good enough is not good enough, that adequate is not adequate, that anything less than excellent will result in dead Americans. Tomorrow, he becomes the voice of the dead soldiers, the ghost of men not yet killed, pleading with the living to save them, to build them equipment that works, to give them a chance, to bring them home. It is an impossible job, but impossible is all he has ever known, from Soissons to Fort Knox to here, from 20 years old to 44, from sergeant to major, from the man who refused to abandon a burning tank to the man who refuses to let civilians build garbage. Same mission, different battlefield, same promise to keep men alive. And tomorrow that promise gets tested in ways Holbrook cannot yet imagine, in frustrations he cannot yet foresee, in battles against bureaucracy and physics, in human nature, and all the forces that resist excellence in favor of expedience. But he will fight them, all of them, for as long as it takes, because that is what he does. That is who he is. That is the only way he knows how to be. A warrior without a war has found his war, and it is just beginning. Morning comes too early. The knock on the door is sharp and insistent. 0530, still dark outside, still cold. The kind of cold that makes you question why anyone would build a factory in Iowa in December. Holbrook is already awake, has been awake for an hour, lying in the narrow bed thinking about everything that needs to be done, everything that can go wrong, all the ways this impossible project can fail. The knock is almost a relief, an excuse to stop thinking and start doing. Callahan is in the hallway, already dressed, already alert, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. Real coffee. Somehow he found real coffee in a construction zone in Iowa at dawn. The man has talents that defy explanation. They drink in silence, watch the darkness through the window, watch the lights of the factory burning bright against the pre-dawn black, watch men moving between buildings, working, always working. The project never stops, cannot stop. Time is the enemy, and time does not sleep. At 0600, they walk to the main assembly building. The December wind cuts through their coats. The river smell is strong today. Mississippi water and winter mud and industrial progress all mixed together into something that smells like America working. The factory floor is chaos organized by desperation. 50 people maybe, scattered across the enormous space, working on different projects in different areas with different levels of completion. It looks random, looks inefficient, but Holbrook recognizes the pattern, recognizes the way people organize when there is no established procedure, when everyone is improvising, when the only plan is to keep moving forward and figure it out as you go. A young man approaches them, 25 maybe, thin, nervous energy, clipboard in hand, the universal sign of someone who has been given responsibility without authority. Major Holbrook? I am Robert Chen, Captain Chen. I am the engineering liaison for the project. MIT graduate, mechanical engineering. I was assigned here last month to help coordinate between the Army and IH. Holbrook studies him, sees intelligence in the eyes, sees education, but also sees inexperience, sees someone who knows theory but not practice, who has read about tanks but never bled in one. Captain Chen, good to meet you. This is Master Sergeant Callahan. He knows more about tank maintenance than anyone alive. You have questions about whether something will work in the field, you ask him. Chen shakes Callahan's hand, then launches into explanation without prompting, the way engineers do when they are nervous, when they are trying to prove they belong, trying to prove they know what they are doing even when they do not. Sir, we have significant challenges. The pilot tanks from Rock Island are behind schedule. We were supposed to receive the first complete vehicle in January. Now they are saying March, maybe April, which means we are setting up production based on incomplete specifications. We have hull castings arriving next week, but no final drawings for how to machine them. We have suspension components in various stages of manufacture, but the final assembly procedure has not been determined. We have engines, but no transmission mounts. We have guns, but no mounts. Everything is disconnected. Nothing fits together yet. How are you dealing with it? Chen's expression tightens, frustration barely contained. We are improvising, making educated guesses, building fixtures based on preliminary drawings, and hoping they are close enough that we can adapt when the real specifications arrive. It is not ideal. It is barely functional. But it is all we can do. Show me. Chen leads them across the factory floor, points out the various stations, the various projects, the various attempts to build something from nothing. Here is where we are trying to set up the hull welding station. We have the shells, basic castings from Orton, but they need to be machined, need to have openings cut for hatches and vision ports and gun mounts, need to be welded to the floor plates and roof plates, but we do not have the machine tools yet, so we are using portable equipment, hand tools, torches and grinders and files, making it work through sheer stubbornness. A woman works on one of the hull castings. 50s, strong-looking, confident movements. She marks locations with chalk, measures twice, measures 3 times, then starts cutting with a torch. The flame is bright blue and white. The metal glows orange, then falls away in glowing chunks. Precise cuts, careful work. The work of someone who understands that mistakes here become problems later. Holbrook recognizes her from last night. Martha Kowalski, 3 sons in the service. Michael, the eldest, somewhere in training. The younger 2, twins, already deployed, but she does not know where. Welding because it is the only way she can protect them. He watches her work for a moment, watches the precision, the care, the absolute focus on doing it right. This is what gives him hope, not the engineering, not the specifications, not the management. The people, the individuals who care enough to be excellent even when no one is watching, even when cutting corners would be easier, even when good enough might be good enough for everyone except the men whose lives depend on it. They move on. Chen continues the tour, continues the explanation, continues trying to make sense of chaos. Over here is the suspension assembly area. We are building the torsion bar mounts, the arms, the road wheels, everything that connects the tank to the ground. It is complex, more complex than the Stewart suspension. More parts, more precision required, more ways it can fail. The problem is the specifications keep changing. First, we were building for a 16-ton vehicle, then 22 tons. Now, if they go to the 75-millimeter gun, it might be 28 tons. Each change cascades through everything. Stronger springs, heavier arms, more robust mounting points. We are building 3 different versions simultaneously and hoping one of them is right. That is wasteful. It is survival. We cannot afford to wait for final specifications, cannot afford to start over from zero every time something changes. So we hedge. We build multiple options. We hope that one of them is close enough to adapt. It costs more, takes more time, uses more resources, but it is faster than the alternative. Holbrook understands the logic, hates it, but understands it. This is what happens when you try to build something before you know what you are building. When pressure to produce overrides the need to plan. When war forces you to act before you are ready. What about quality control? How are you ensuring parts are within specification? Chen hesitates. The hesitation tells Holbrook everything he needs to know before Chen says a word. We are doing our best. We have inspection stations. We have go-no-go gauges for critical dimensions. We have procedures. But sir, we are building parts with hand tools, with portable equipment, with whatever we can make work. Precision is difficult. Consistency is nearly impossible. We are getting variation that would never be acceptable in normal production. But normal production is not an option. So we document everything. We measure everything. We try to understand what tolerance we are actually achieving versus what tolerance we need. And we hope that real machine tools arrive before we build too many parts that have to be scrapped. Holbrook makes a mental note. Quality control is going to be a major issue, maybe the major issue. You can have perfect designs and perfect specifications, but if the parts do not actually meet those specifications, then you are building expensive garbage. This needs to be addressed soon, before bad parts become installed components, before problems become baked into the tanks themselves. They continue through the factory, through more partially completed projects, more improvised solutions, More examples of determination trying to substitute for proper resources. Finally, they reach a corner where several men work on what looks like a gun mount. Complex assembly of gears and bearings and metal plates. The mount for the 57mm gun. The thing that lets the gunner aim, that lets him track targets, that keeps the gun stable when firing. One of the men is older, late 40s, intense concentration, measuring something with calipers, writing numbers in a notebook, checking, rechecking. The obsessive attention to detail that marks either a perfectionist or someone who has been burned by mistakes before. Chen introduces him. Sir, this is Frank Morrison. He is the chief engineer from Linotype. They are building the gun mounts. Frank, this is Major Holbrook. He is our new technical liaison from the Army. Morrison looks up, studies Holbrook with the same intensity he was studying the gun mount, sizing him up, deciding whether he is an obstacle or an asset, whether he is someone who will help or someone who will make everything harder. Major, welcome to the chaos. I hope you brought patience because you are going to need it. Mr. Morrison, I hear you have been through 3 different gun designs already. 37mm, 57mm, now maybe 75mm. That must be frustrating. Frustrating is one word for it. Soul-crushing is another. We spent 3 months on the 37mm mount. Got it perfect. Beautiful piece of engineering. Smooth traverse. Easy elevation. Could be assembled by a trained crew in under 10 minutes. Then they changed the gun. Everything we did became worthless. Every calculation, every drawing, every prototype. Waste. So we started over on the 57mm. Bigger gun, more recoil, different mounting points, different balance, different everything. Spent 2 months on that, got it working. Got it good. Not perfect, but good. Then last week we heard they might go to 75mm, which means starting over again. You gonna do it? Start over a 3rd time? Morrison sets down them calipers. Looks at Holbrook directly. His face is tired, but his eyes are determined. The eyes of a man who has decided to see this through no matter what it costs. Yes, because what else am I going to do? Quit? Go home? Tell my team that it is too hard? Tell them that we wasted 6 months and have nothing to show for it, so we might as well give up? I cannot do that. They cannot do that. We started this. We are going to finish it. Even if we have to start over 10 times. Even if it takes years. Even if the war ends before we get it right. We are going to finish it because that is what you do when you say you are going to do something. Holbrook feels respect settling into place. Morrison is not a soldier, has never been a soldier. Probably has never even held a gun except for the ones he is building mounts for. But he has something more important than experience. He has character. The kind of character that does not quit, that finishes what it starts, that keeps promises even when no one would blame you for breaking them. Mr. Morrison, when you finish that gun mount, it is going to be the best gun mount in the American arsenal. I can see that. The question is, how do we help you get there faster? What do you need that you do not have? Morrison considers, then pulls out a list. Of course he has a list. Engineers always have lists. Machine tools, I need 3 vertical mills, 2 horizontal mills, a precision lathe, a gear cutter, various fixtures and gauges. I ordered them in March. Was told they would arrive in June, then August, then October. Now they are saying maybe January, maybe February. Meanwhile, I am building precision parts with hand files and drill presses. It works, but it is slow, so slow. And the tolerances are not what they should be. I will make some calls, see what I can do. No promises, but I will try. I appreciate that. But Major, even with tools, even with everything we need, there is a bigger problem. We do not know what we are building for. Is it 57mm? Is it 75mm? Is it something else? Every time we commit to a design, it changes. Every time we build something, it becomes obsolete. At some point, we need someone to make a decision and stick with it. Otherwise, we are just burning time and money and building nothing useful. You are right, and that is above my pay grade. But I will push. I will make noise. I will do everything I can to get you an answer you can build around. That is all I can ask. They shake hands. An understanding reached. Morrison goes back to his measurements, back to his calculations, back to the endless process of trying to build something perfect with imperfect tools and incomplete information. Holbrook and Callahan spend the rest of the day walking the factory, meeting workers, watching processes, identifying problems, making notes, building a mental model of how this operation functions or does not function, or barely functions through sheer determination and improvisation. By 1800 hours, Holbrook has filled 3 pages of a notebook with observations, problems, suggestions. The list is long, longer than he hoped, shorter than he feared. Most of the issues are solvable with enough time and resources. The question is whether they will have either. That evening, he sits down with Ashford in the temporary headquarters, spreads out his notes, prepares to deliver bad news that Ashford probably already knows. Mr. Ashford, I spent the day walking your factory, talking to your people, watching them work. And I am going to be direct because you asked me to be direct. You are in trouble. Not fatal trouble. Not yet. But trouble. Your quality control is inadequate. Your tooling is insufficient. Your specifications are incomplete. You are trying to build tanks before you know what tanks you are building. And every day that continues, you are creating problems that will be harder to fix later. Ashford does not look surprised, does not look offended, just looks tired. The kind of tired that comes from knowing you are failing and not knowing how to stop. Tell me something I do not know, Major. All right, here is something you might not know. Your people are excellent. Martha Kowalski is the best welder I have seen in 20 years. Frank Morrison is building gun mounts with the dedication of a man building cathedrals. Captain Chen is learning faster than anyone has a right to expect. Your workers care. They are trying. They are giving you everything they have. The problem is not your people. The problem is the system. The problem is trying to do the impossible on an impossible timeline with impossible resources. And unless something changes, unless we get specification freeze and machine tools and actual blueprints we can build from, your excellent people are going to produce inadequate tanks, not because they are not good enough, but because no one is good enough to overcome these obstacles. What do you want me to do about it? I want you to do 3 things. First, stop accepting specification changes. Tell Rock Island and tell the Ordnance Department that effective immediately the design is frozen. Whatever version exists today is the version we build. No more changes, no more improvements, no more brilliant ideas from engineers who do not have to actually manufacture this thing. We lock it down and we build it. Second, I want you to prioritize quality over quantity. Right now, you are trying to build parts as fast as possible. Instead, build them as well as possible. Slow down, add inspection steps, or reject parts that are out of tolerance. Create a culture where good enough is not good enough. Yes, it will slow production. Yes, it will cost more. But better to build 10 perfect tanks than 100 defective ones. Third, I want you to document everything. Every problem, every delay, every compromise, every specification we cannot meet. Create a paper trail so complete that when this project succeeds or fails, everyone will know exactly why. Protect yourself. Protect your people. Make sure that if tanks fail in combat, the blame goes where it belongs. To the people who created impossible requirements, not to the people who tried their best to meet them. Ashford is quiet for a long moment, processing, thinking, weighing the advice against the realities of his situation. Major, you are asking me to slow down production and fight with Rock Island and tell the Ordnance Department no. Do you have any idea what that will do to my career, to this company, to the contracts we hope to get in the future? Yes, it might ruin you, but it might also save lives. And I know which one I can live with. Ashford stands, walks to the window, looks out at the factory, at the lights burning against the darkness, at the dream he is trying to build. When I took this job, my boss told me this was the opportunity of a lifetime. Told me International Harvester was going to build tanks, was going to be part of the war effort, was going to matter. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I wanted this to be the thing I was remembered for. Now I am not sure what I am going to be remembered for. The man who built the M7, or the man who failed to build the M7, or the man who built something that looked like the M7 but did not work and got men killed. I do not know anymore. Holbrook joins him at the window, stands beside him. 2 men looking at the same thing and seeing different possibilities, different futures, different outcomes. Mr. Ashford, you will be remembered for trying, for doing your best in an impossible situation, for refusing to quit when quitting made sense. That is worth something. That is worth a lot. Whether the tank works or not, whether it sees combat or not, you will know you did not compromise, did not cut corners, did not sacrifice lives for convenience. That is the only victory that matters. I hope you are right. So do I. The weeks blur together. December into January, January into February. The factory grows, more buildings completed, more equipment arrives. Some of the machine tools finally show up. Not all of them, not enough of them, but some. Progress measured in inches instead of miles, but progress nonetheless. Holbrook settles into a routine. Mornings walking the factory floor, watching work, identifying problems before they become disasters. Afternoons in meetings with Chen and Ashford and the various engineers and managers who keep this operation running. Evenings writing reports to Patterson, documenting everything, creating the paper trail that will either justify this project or condemn it. He makes calls, pulls strings, uses every contact he has built over 23 years in the Army to try to get resources redirected to Bettendorf. Machine tools, priority ratings, specification freezes. Some calls work, most do not. But he keeps trying because trying is all he has. Callahan becomes indispensable. The man can look at a part and know if it will work in the field, can spot tolerances that are too loose, can identify shortcuts that seem harmless, but will cause failures under combat stress. The workers learn to trust him. Learn that when Callahan says something needs to be redone, it needs to be redone. No arguments, no excuses, just fix it and fix it right. Frank Morrison becomes a friend. They talk engineering, they talk philosophy, they talk about the burden of building things that other people will use in ways you cannot control, about the responsibility of creation, about how every decision matters and you never know which decisions will matter most until it is too late to change them. One evening in late February, Morrison invites Holbrook to the linotype factory, shows him the completed gun mount for the 57mm. It is beautiful, functional art, every gear precisely cut, every bearing perfectly seated, every movement smooth and controlled, the kind of thing you build when you refuse to accept anything less than excellence. This is for the 57mm. If they change to 75mm, this becomes scrap metal. 6 months of work, wasted, or not wasted, because you learned, because the next one will be better, because you proved you can do it. That is not waste. That is education. Morrison smiles, tired smile, grateful smile. You are a strange man, Major. You see failure as success, see obstacles as opportunities, see problems as challenges. I do not know if that is optimism or delusion. Maybe both. Maybe that is what you need to survive in the Army. The ability to convince yourself that the impossible is just the difficult wearing a scary mask. They test the gun mount, install it in a partial turret mock-up, move it through its full range of motion, elevation, depression, traverse. It works perfectly, smoothly, no binding, no sticking, no problems. Morrison's face shows satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that it works, sadness that it might never be used. In March, the first pilot tank arrives from Rock Island Arsenal, the T-7 with the 57mm gun. It rolls off a flatbed truck onto the factory floor. Men gather to look at it, to see what 6 months of chaos has been building toward, to see the physical manifestation of all their work. It is beautiful and ugly at the same time. Beautiful in its functional lines, in its purposeful construction, ugly in its lethality, in its cold statement that this exists to kill and be killed, to participate in humanity's endless conversation with violence. Holbrook climbs inside, sits in the commander's position, the same position he sat in 23 years ago in a different tank in a different war. The metal smells the same, oil and paint and steel. The confined space feels the same. Close, tight, designed by people who have never tried to fight from inside a steel box. He checks sight lines, checks crew positions, checks how the commander can see and communicate and coordinate, and he sees problems, lots of problems. The turret ring is too tight. The gunner cannot traverse smoothly. The loader position is cramped. The radio is positioned where it will be impossible to operate under combat conditions. He climbs out, finds Chen, finds Ashford, delivers the news they do not want to hear. This needs modifications. significant modifications before we start production. The fight that follows lasts 3 days. Holbrook insisting on changes. Ashford and Chen explaining why changes are impossible, why the time has passed, why they have to build what they have, not what they wish they had, why perfect is the enemy of done. In the end, compromise. Some changes, not all. The ones Holbrook considers absolutely critical. The ones where failure means men die instead of just being inconvenienced. It is not perfect, not close to perfect, but it is better, and better might be good enough. Production begins, slowly, painfully, 1 tank per week, then 2, building up, learning, fixing problems, adapting. The American way, not elegant, not efficient, but effective. Eventually, hopefully. Then in May, everything changes again. New orders from Ordnance, switch to 75mm gun. The T7 is now too heavy to be a light tank. Reclassify as medium tank, designated M7 medium, which means new specifications, new testing, new everything. Frank Morrison takes the news quietly, nods once, goes back to his drawing board, starts designing gun mount number 3, does not complain, does not rage, just does what needs to be done because that is who he is. That is what he does. But the cost is visible in his face, in the new lines, in the exhaustion that does not fade with sleep, in the knowledge that he has been climbing a mountain and just discovered it has no summit. Just false peak after false peak. Just the endless grind of effort without a rival. Holbrook finds him out one night in the linotype factory, working alone. Everyone else has gone home. Just Morrison and his drawings and his calculations and his determination. Frank, go home. Sleep. This will still be here tomorrow. Cannot sleep. Keep thinking about the men who will use this, about whether it will work, about whether I am good enough to build something worthy of them. I make typesetting machines, Jim. I align letters. I make words print straight on paper. And now I am making weapons, making things designed to kill, making things that men will depend on to stay alive. What if I am not good enough? What if I make a mistake? What if the gun mount fails and someone dies because I did not get it right? The question hangs in the air. The question every builder asks, every engineer, every craftsman. The question that has no good answer because you never know, cannot know, will not know until it is tested in conditions you cannot simulate, under stresses you cannot predict, by men whose lives you cannot protect except through the quality of your work. Frank, listen to me. You are good enough. I have watched you work. I have seen your attention to detail, your refusal to compromise, your willingness to start over when start over is required. That is what makes you good enough. Not your experience, not your education, your character, and your character is sound. But what if it is not enough? What if I do everything right and it still fails? Then it fails, and we learn from it, and we build better next time. That is all we can do, all anyone can do. Give everything we have and hope it is sufficient. And if it is not, hope that our failures teach lessons that prevent future failures. That is the burden of building things, of creating things, of trying to make the world better, knowing we might make it worse instead. Morrison nods slowly, does not look convinced but looks less burdened. Sometimes that is the best you can do. Not solve problems, just make them slightly more bearable. July brings heat and humidity and the first complete M7 medium tank. 28 tons, 75mm gun, 5-man crew, Continental radial engine. Everything the American tank force needs in theory. Everything that should make a difference. They roll it out for testing. Holbrook drives it first, wants to feel it personally, wants to understand what crews will experience. The engine starts smoothly, plenty of power. The transmission shifts well, better than Stewart, better than Grant. The suspension handles the weight. The gun mount works. Frank Morrison's third attempt is perfect. Smooth traverse, easy elevation, no problems. Oh. But there are problems, always problems. The brakes are inadequate for the weight. The steering is difficult, requires too much physical effort. The tank is fast on flat ground but struggles in mud, lacks low-end torque. The whole thing feels like a good design pushed past its limits, like a light tank forced to be a medium tank and not quite succeeding at either. They send it to Aberdeen Proving Ground for official testing. Send it to Fort Knox for Armored Board evaluation. Send it into the cold mathematics of military assessment, where feelings do not matter and only performance counts. The reports come back in August. Professional, detailed, devastating. The M7 performs adequately, outperforms Stewart significantly, matches Sherman in some areas, but does not exceed Sherman enough to justify production. Same weight, same gun, similar armor, no clear advantage. Recommend production continue on Sherman platform. Recommend M7 project termination. Holbrook reads the report alone in his quarters, reads it twice, 3 times, looking for hope, looking for something that would justify continuing, looking for a reason to fight, finds nothing. The assessment is fair, accurate, honest. The M7 is a good tank, just not good enough, not different enough, not better enough. He walks to the factory. Late evening, most workers gone home, just a few on night shift, working on the 7 tanks currently in production. 7 tanks that will probably never see combat. 7 tanks that represent 18 months of effort by hundreds of people. 18 months of sacrifice and determination and refusing to quit. Martha Kowalski is there, still welding, always welding. She looks up when Holbrook approaches, sees something in his face, knows without being told. It is over. The project is canceled. Her voice is flat, accepting. She has been through enough loss to recognize it when it arrives. Not yet, but soon. The reports are bad. The Army does not see the value, does not see why we need this when we have Sherman. And they are right. We built a good tank, just not a necessary tank. My sons, Michael graduated tank training last month, got his assignment. He is going to the 3rd Armored Division. The twins are already somewhere fighting. North Africa, maybe. I do not know. They cannot tell me, but they will be in Sherman tanks. Are they good enough? Will they protect my boys? The Sherman is a good tank. Not perfect, but good. Your boys have as good a chance as anyone can give them. Better than some. Better than if we had nothing but Stewarts. And Martha, your welding went into every tank we refurbished here. Every Sherman we sent back to the war. One of those might be the one that saves Michael, or saves his crew. You have already protected them in ways you will never know. But not as good as if we had finished this. Not as good as if we had time to get it right. Maybe? Or maybe the M7 would have had problems we have not found yet. Maybe it would have failed in ways we cannot predict. Maybe Sherman is actually better because it is proven, because we know its flaws, because we have learned to work around them. I do not know anymore. I do not know if we built something great or wasted 18 months. I will not know until this war is over and we can count the cost and see if our efforts mattered. They will matter, even if the tanks never fight, even if they sit in a warehouse forever. They will matter because we did not quit, because we tried, because we refused to accept that we could not do it. That matters. Holbrook wants to believe her, wants to think that effort alone is sufficient, that trying counts even when failing, that the journey matters more than the destination. But 23 years in the Army has taught him that outcomes matter, that good intentions do not stop bullets, that men die because of failures regardless of how hard people tried to prevent those failures. He walks home through the August heat, through the humidity that makes breathing difficult, through the weight of understanding that his mission is ending, that the war he came here to fight is over, that he lost, not through lack of effort, not through compromise, not through cutting corners. He lost because sometimes doing everything right still is not enough. Sometimes the universe does not care how hard you try. Sometimes perfect execution of a flawed plan still results in failure. In September, the official order comes. M7 project terminated effective immediately. 13 tanks total delivered. 7 more in partial production. Cease all work. Repurpose factory for Sherman refurbishment and spare parts of production. Thank you for your efforts. Your country appreciates your service. The words are sterile, professional, the kind of language bureaucracies use when they are discontinuing something that consumed hundreds of people for over a year. The kind of language that treats human effort as a line item in a budget, easily added, easily deleted, easily forgotten. Holbrook calls a meeting, assembles everyone he can, workers, engineers, managers, everyone who contributed, everyone who cared. They gather on the factory floor, standing among the unfinished tanks, standing in the physical manifestation of their collective effort. He climbs onto the hull of M7 number 7, the last tank they will build, the end of the line, looks at the faces looking at him, sees exhaustion, sees disappointment, sees the knowledge that they have been told their work does not matter, that their sacrifice was insufficient, that they failed. And he gives them the speech they need to hear. Not about failure, about honor. The M7 project is over. The Army has decided they do not need this tank. That Sherman is sufficient. That what we built, while good, is not different enough to justify production. And they are right. From a purely practical standpoint, they are right. We built a good tank that does not fill a need that is not already filled. That is the truth. That is the cold mathematics of war. But here is another truth. You did not fail. We did not fail. We were given an impossible task. Build a tank in 18 months. Build it while the specifications changed monthly. Build it without proper tools or proper drawings or proper support. Build it with people who had never built tanks. Build it during a war that was changing the requirements faster than we could adapt. Build it perfectly the first time, because there would be no second time. That is what they asked us to do, and we nearly did it. The M7 is not a bad tank. It is a good tank, a very good tank. In different circumstances, with different timing, with different competition, it would be in production. It would be rolling off this line by the hundreds. Our boys would be fighting in it, winning in it, coming home because of it. We came that close to making a difference. But close is not enough in war. Second place is not enough. Good enough is not enough when competing against better. And Sherman is better, not because of engineering, but because of timing, because of production lines already established, because of logistics already solved, because of crews already trained. Sherman has momentum, has investment, has the advantage of being there first. And in war, being there first often matters more than being slightly better. So the M7 ends here. But what you learn does not end. What you built does not end. Martha, your welding will go into every Sherman we refurbish here, every tank we repair, every vehicle we maintain. Your son Michael is going to 3rd Armored. That division will get tanks we worked on. Your hands will protect him even when you cannot be there. The twins fighting somewhere will benefit from standards you set here. Standards that spread to every factory, every depot, every maintenance crew. You built a culture of excellence. That does not end with this project. Frank, your gun mounts are being used on other projects. Your designs are being studied. Your innovations are being borrowed. You built something that matters even though it will not bear your name. Every gun mount that works smoothly, that lets a gunner track his target, that helps bring a crew home, owes something to what you proved was possible here. Captain Chen, you learned more about tank production in 18 months than most engineers learn in careers. That knowledge will make you valuable, will make you necessary, will let you contribute to future projects that will matter. You came here not knowing if you belonged. You leave knowing you can build anything, knowing you can learn anything, knowing you are capable of more than you thought. That is not failure. That is transformation. Private Torres sent me a letter last month. He is in the Pacific now, maintaining stewards. He wrote that he listens to engines the way I taught him, that he catches problems before they become failures, that his crew trust him because he refuses to accept adequate when excellent is possible. I did not teach him that in Kentucky. I only started. You finished teaching him. This factory taught him, because the culture here is infectious, because excellence spreads, because when you see people refusing to compromise, you learn to refuse to compromise. And every worker here, every person who spent this year building the impossible, you now know you can do it. You know you can build things that should not be buildable. You know you can learn skills you did not know existed. You know you are capable of more than you thought. That is not failure. That is education. That is growth. That is the foundation for everything you do next. They say the M7 was a failure. They say we wasted time and money and effort on something that did not matter. They are wrong. We built a family. We built a capability. We built a foundation. This factory will now refurbish Shermans. We'll build parts. We'll maintain vehicles. We'll support the war effort in ways that matter even if they are not glamorous. And we will do it excellently because we learned how to be excellent building the M7. So yes, the project is over, but our work is not over. Our contribution is not over. Our responsibility is not over. We move forward. We adapt. We overcome. Because that is what Americans do. We try the impossible, and when the impossible defeats us, we try something else. And we keep trying until we win or until there is nothing left to try, my mind. And even then, even after defeat, we refuse to accept that we are defeated. We learn, we grow, we prepare for the next challenge. Thank you for 18 months of the hardest work I have ever witnessed. Thank you for refusing to quit. Thank you for caring when caring was difficult. Thank you for being excellent when adequate would have been accepted. You are builders. You are creators. You are warriors in the war that happens before bullets fly. And I am honored to have served with you. The applause starts slowly. One person, then another, then everyone. Not polite applause, not obligatory applause, real applause. The applause of people who needed to hear that their work mattered, that they mattered, that failure does not erase effort. Martha Kowalski is crying, not sad crying, something else. Relief maybe, or release. The burden of 18 months of worry finally lifted. The knowledge that her work will continue, that her contribution matters, that her sons have some small advantage because of what she built here. Frank Morrison shakes Holbrook's hand, does not speak, does not need to. The grip says everything, says thank you, says I understand, says this was worth it even though it failed, says I would do it again. That evening, Holbrook sits with Callahan. They drink the whiskey that has been sitting in Holbrook's desk drawer for 5 years. The bottle from Sarah's funeral, the bottle he saved for when the pain stopped. The pain has not stopped, will never stop. But some pain is meant to be carried, meant to be remembered, meant to remind you what matters. They drink in silence, the silence of men who have fought together, who have failed together, who understand that some fights matter regardless of outcome. Jack, do you think we made a difference? Yes. How can you be sure? Because I saw Martha Kowalski weld, because I saw Frank Morrison design, because I saw young kids learn skills they will use for decades, because I saw you refuse to compromise even when compromise would have been easier. That matters. Maybe not in ways we can measure, maybe not in ways that show up in reports, but it matters. I hope you are right. I am all. He arrives in England in November 1944, takes command of a Sherman, call sign Iron Horse. His crew is young. The gunner is Michael Kowalski, Martha's son. Your mother Martha, the welder? Yes, sir. She taught me to care about quality. They fight through France, Belgium, Germany, the Sherman holds. Holbrook brings them all home, every one, because he knows every bolt matters, every weld matters. Years later, he returns to Iowa. Martha's still there. You brought Michael home. Your welding brought him home, Martha. Your excellence saved him. The circle closes. Her welds went into refurbished Shermans. Michael fought and won, survived because someone refused to compromise 18 years before. The M7 sits in a museum now, monument to honorable failure, to people who refuse to quit. Holbrook visits, old man, old machine, both survivors. The M7 failed, but the people who built it succeeded in being excellent, in caring when difficult, in keeping promises no one knew they made. That is enough. That is honor. That is the only legacy worth having. A warrior without a war found his war. Won by building culture, not tanks. By spreading excellence invisibly. By saving thousands through standards set in Iowa. The M7 sits silent. Monument to truth. That honor matters more than victory. That invisible impacts matter most. That is the story, not success, honor. And honor endures. End.